What if you woke up one morning and realized that time had quietly stolen your confidence? Not your money, not your health, but that quiet belief that you still mattered. You sit at the kitchen table staring at the same cup of coffee, and it hits you. No one's asking for your ideas anymore. The phone that once rang with purpose now stays silent. The mirror shows a face the world seems to have moved past. Now imagine you're 70. No job, no savings, no one who really believes you can start again. Would you still dare to dream? Most people wouldn't. Most would shrink into survival mode, just enough to get by, not enough to feel alive. Society tells us that the clock runs out after 60, that ambition has an expiration date, that passion belongs to the young. But that's a lie disguised as wisdom. Because somewhere in this country, a man, let's call him Harold, decided to challenge that lie. At 70 years old, with no money and nothing left to prove, he made a choice, not a desperate one, a deliberate one. He decided his story wasn't finished yet, and that decision changed everything. See, Harold didn't find a miracle. He built one. Not overnight, not with luck, but with a daily act of courage, one small yes at a time. By the end of this talk, you'll see exactly what he did, and more importantly, how you can do it too. Because this isn't a story about age. It's a story about possibility, the kind that still belongs to you no matter what your birth certificate says. When Harold turned 70, life didn't collapse all at once. It faded, slowly. It started with small things, the invitations that stopped coming, the emails that stopped mattering, the quiet mornings that stretched longer than they should. He told himself it was normal. Everyone slows down eventually. But deep down, he knew this wasn't slowing down. It was disappearing. He lived alone in a modest apartment on the edge of town. The walls were lined with photos of a life that felt like someone else's movie. The wedding day, the first house, the business that once promised everything before it crumbled. He'd lost his savings, his confidence, and the woman who had believed in him when no one else did. Most days looked the same. Oatmeal, news, silence, a man watching his own life in reruns. And it's strange how quickly purpose evaporates when no one expects anything from you. He didn't even notice when the day stopped having names. One evening, he caught his reflection in the window. For a moment, he didn't recognize himself, not because of age, but because of absence. The spark, the humor, the drive, gone. He whispered, "When did I stop being me?" The question lingered like a ghost in the room. He tried to fill the void with routine, morning walks, cheap coffee, polite smiles to neighbors who'd forgotten his name. But no rhythm could drown out the quiet ache inside him, the fear that maybe the best parts of his story had already been told. Then came the night everything cracked open. A power outage swept through the building, leaving him in total darkness. The silence was heavier than usual. He fumbled for a candle, lit it, and watched the flame tremble in the still air. That tiny light made the room look both fragile and honest. For the first time in years, Harold sat there without distractions. No TV, no noise, just him and the truth. He thought about the man he used to be, the builder, the dreamer, the one who could turn a blank page into a plan. And he realized something terrifying. He hadn't lost his dreams. He'd stopped feeding them. They hadn't died. They'd starved. Tears welled up, not from sadness, but from recognition. He finally saw the real enemy. Not time, not failure, not age. It was the quiet acceptance of a smaller life, the slow surrender, the voice that said, "You've done enough, let it go." But that night, in the flicker of that single candle, Harold made a different choice, a defiant one. He whispered into the dark, "I'm not done yet." It wasn't a plan. It wasn't even confidence. It was rebellion. Against invisibility, against resignation, against the idea that meaning has an expiration date. And that moment, that whisper, was where everything changed. The next morning, Harold woke before the sun. The apartment was wrapped in that soft blue quiet that only happens before dawn, the hour when the world still belongs to those willing to start over. He made coffee, sat by the window, and watched the first light break across the city. The buildings looked the same, the streets the same, but something inside him wasn't. He couldn't name it yet, but he could feel it. A pulse, faint but alive. For years, Harold had been waiting for a rescue. A phone call, a miracle, a reason to believe again. But sitting there, he realized no one was coming. There was no cavalry, no restart button, no perfect moment, just him, and the choice to stop waiting. That realization felt both terrifying and freeing, because when there's no one left to save you, you finally understand. You were the rescuer all along. He looked around his small apartment, the faded photographs, the unpaid bills, the stack of newspapers, and saw something he hadn't seen in years. Possibility. The walls that once felt like a prison now looked like a blank page. He whispered, "If I'm still breathing, I'm still becoming." It wasn't just a hopeful thought, it was a declaration, the beginning of a new identity. See, Harold had spent a lifetime defining himself by titles: husband, employee, provider. But those roles were costumes, not essence. When they were stripped away, what remained was the real man, still curious, still capable, still unfinished. He reached for an old notebook and wrote 5 words across the top page. I'm still a builder inside. He didn't know what he'd build next, but he knew the first foundation had to be himself. And here's what Harold discovered in that quiet morning of truth. The world doesn't shrink with age. Your imagination does. The moment you see yourself as done, life agrees. But when you dare to see yourself as a work in progress, life rushes in with raw material, people, ideas, opportunities, eager to help you rebuild. That day, Harold didn't just wake up, he came back to life. The shift didn't happen overnight. Awareness is the spark, but what follows is work. Harold knew that if he wanted a new life, he couldn't just think differently, he had to live differently. So he began with something small, almost embarrassingly small. He created a rule. Do one meaningful thing every day, not 10, not 5, 1. Day 1, he called an old friend he hadn't spoken to in years. Day 2, he read an article about community programs for seniors. Day 3, he wrote down 3 skills he still wanted to learn before he died. It wasn't about speed, it was about motion. That's the first tool, momentum over magnitude. Most people wait for a big opportunity, but life rewards those who move, not those who wait. A small action done daily builds a rhythm, and rhythm creates direction. The second tool Harold used was the 3-question filter. Every time an opportunity appeared, even something as simple as helping a neighbor, he asked himself, does this help me learn? Does this help me grow? Does this help me contribute? If the answer was yes to even one, he'd say yes. That simple rule became his compass. The third tool was environment design. Harold realized he couldn't think like a builder while living in a room filled with reminders of endings. So he cleared his space, threw away old bills, boxed up memories that hurt more than they helped, and added one new object, a small plant by the window. He called it proof of life. Every time he watered it, he reminded himself that growth needs tending, not luck. Then came the fourth tool, skill stacking. Instead of trying to reinvent himself overnight, Harold layered small complementary abilities. He joined a community class on public speaking just to practice connecting with people again. He volunteered twice a week to read stories to kids. Those tiny acts sharpened his voice, patience, and confidence. He didn't know it yet, but those same skills would become the bridge to his next big chapter. Finally, the fifth tool, reflection. Each night, Harold wrote one sentence in his notebook. Sometimes it was progress, sometimes frustration, sometimes prayer. But writing made his growth visible. It turned invisible change into evidence. These 5 habits didn't make him rich. They made him alive again. Because purpose isn't something you find at the end of your life. It's something you build in the middle of it, one honest choice at a time. 5 years later, Harold wasn't the same man who once whispered into the dark. He'd helped launch a dozen small businesses through the community center. Bakeries, repair shops, tutoring services, online stores. People half his age came to him for advice. He didn't just rebuild his life, he became a builder of others. But here's what mattered most. He never chased success again. He chased meaning. And meaning has a strange way of multiplying itself. At 75, Harold walked into that same apartment, smaller now, simpler, and smiled at the plant on the windowsill. It was tall, green, and alive. Proof of life, proof that you can start again at any age as long as you're willing to say yes to the next small step. So here's my question to you. What if your greatest chapter hasn't even started yet? What if the thing you think you've lost, your spark, your confidence, your time, is still waiting for you to claim it? You don't need a miracle, you don't need permission. You just need a pen, a page, and one clear decision. Write down one sentence, a declaration, not a wish. I'm still a builder. I'm still becoming. I'm not done yet. Because the truth is, the future doesn't care about your age. It only cares about your next choice. So grab the notebook, turn the page, write it down, start now, don't wait.